I got to put you on the spot. No hedging. No hedging. In the history of NASCAR, what is the greatest rivalry ever? You have to pick one driver versus another driver. Which is the best one ever?
Oh, man,
It's your
man.
opinion, so you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, I know. There were so many rivalries that went on behind the scenes that kind of got taken care of, but the real bare bones rivalries that there really wasn't any talking out of it, and I have to go back to Bobby Allison and Richard Petty. I mean, to me, because that was real. It was. It wasn't playtime with those guys, right? Uh, and it finally got to the point where it was costing the King and Bobby Allison money, you know. And if you remember this story, Richard, I think the King and Bobby finally sat down and they said, "Listen, you know, we're taking ourselves out of the race each week. Our teams are fighting, actually fist fighting after the races, in the garage area, and our cars are sitting here tore up every single week. We have got to figure out how to stop this and put it behind us." And those two were strong enough mentally to put aside their feelings of hate, or not, maybe not hate, but dislike for that guy, right? They were strong enough mentally to sit down and talk it out and say, "Listen, we're killing ourselves doing this. We've got to get past it and stop." And stop. And they did, you know. That's how strong these guys were. And it went on for a long time. Uh, that, to me, that's the one, Charlie. That's the one. I mean, we go back and look at a lot of them. Spencer and Kurt Busch come to mind. That comes to mind. But that was, it didn't last a long time, but it lasted a while, and it was pretty, you know, it was pretty fierce. I mean, what was it? Spencer wrecked Busch at Indy, and Busch got out of the car. If you remember that in turn 3, and when Spencer come around, he took his hand. Busch took his hand and smacked his butt, and pointed like, "Spencer, you're an ass," right? Then we go to Michigan, and they get into whatever they get into, and after the race, Busch drives up to Spencer's car, which you shouldn't do. Don't do that to Spencer, man. Anyhow, Spencer gets out and he cold cocks him, right? Hits him sitting in the car. So these things go on, but the actual rivalry for the longest period and the one that impressed me was the Petty-Allison. Who's
All
yours?
right.
Did you have one?
I'm trying to think because again, I'm 42
Yeah,
and I was
yeah,
definitely a casual NASCAR fan as a kid, but then I
yeah.
worked in sports for about 20 years, starting in about 2004. So like as a kid, to me, it would have been just in terms of winning, because I'm thinking the 90s when I was paying attention, it would have been Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon. I knew Rusty Wallace. And you were talking about rivalries where they're fighting, they're hating each other. I also was just talking about on the racetrack,
Yeah, yeah.
winning championships. So as I'm 12, 13, it was just obvious as a kid. You saw the black car of Dale Earnhardt, you saw the Rainbow Warrior car. It was easy, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
you liked one or the other. And then I'm
Exactly.
trying to think. So the last 3 years when I've really started to pay attention again, I mean, for a while there, it was Chastain versus everybody. It was
Yeah,
Chastain
yeah,
versus Hendrick, right? I mean, every
yeah,
Hendrick car
yeah.
for a while. And look, I've said this a million times. I I'm a Denny Hamlin fan for many reasons. First of all, I want him to win a championship because he deserves it. But
Right.
also, I think he's the most interesting person in the sport. He keeps it interesting. He's always saying how he feels. He'll challenge NASCAR, he'll challenge other drivers. So I would say right now, I mean, Denny Hamlin versus Kyle Larson seems to be pretty dang good. Again, it's
Yeah.
not Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, because you're talking about a 7-time champ versus what, a 4-time champ. But right now, that's pretty dang good. That's two pretty huge names.
Yeah, it is. And you know, oh man, I'm trying to think how to say it. But those guys, I agree with you 100% of what you just said, Charlie. Denny's real important. He's real important for our sport. I'm a fan of Denny's also, but God, the people love to hate him. Gosh, you'd
Yeah.
love to hate him and the stuff. And anything he gets into on the racetrack gets manifested during the week. The fans pick up on it, and the more hate comes. And then he gets on his podcast. Is yeah, here I am. Here's what I do. I don't give a shit, right?
Yep.
Which is so friggin' refreshing and so cool. Yeah. So I'll tell you another one that was good was Earnhardt and Walter early on
Mhm.
when Darrell was the man, and Earnhardt come along, he was going to be the man, and Darrell didn't like that, and they had their rivalries for a while. So you could go back and look at all these, but you're exactly right. The one we got going on now, it's going to be interesting to see how that works out because basically both of them said, "Yeah, this is not over." I'm like, "Okay, guys, we'll see how this goes."